Hi, everyone. Welcome back to That's Debatable. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the documentary Quiet on Set that just recently came out. We're going to be touching more upon like child stars, what child stars look like now, and also as somebody who works in the entertainment industry, my opinions on it, and a little bit of my insight on the topic. So let's just get into it. So I'm sure everybody has seen the Nickelodeon Quiet on Set documentary, and I watched it, and I watched it all in one sitting because I don't like to watch stuff like when it comes out like that. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a hard watch, and I want to preface this episode with I didn't feel like it was appropriate to get on here and do a full recap of these people's story, just because of the fact that even within that documentary, you can see how difficult it is for them to speak about it, and the bravery and the courage it took for them to get in front of a camera and speak about something so heinous and so traumatic, and especially something about when they were children. I wanted to mainly frame this episode more so in the light of what I view of it now as somebody who does work within the industry and within the entertainment industry, and what child stars look like now, because entertainment is not the same of what it was when iCarly, Victorious, all of that was on and poppin'. It looks very different now. And again, if you haven't watched a documentary, definitely go watch it. It's definitely a trigger warning, but it's something that I think it's just so brave of these people that they sat down and did this. And even like Drake Bell coming out, and you can see how hard it was for him to go back to that time. So there was a lot of stuff that I noticed, and obviously there was like the big things that it's going all over TikTok right now. But I recently watched a podcast interview with Raven, and Raven Simone from That So Raven. She did a sit down interview with somebody else, and he was Corey Monteith's actual brother in real life, and he was on Zoe 101, and they sat down, and something that really kind of stuck out to me was Raven said, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, if you are a child star, we all go through the same things. You all go through the same kind of issues. You deal with the same things. Like, it is a very daunting thing. And one big thing that I took away from the documentary was this constant feeling of these children not having a voice, feeling lost after they're done with their shows, or, obviously a lot of them turn to drug abuse or substance abuse, or a lot of them have mental health issues, just because as a child you are already scared. I guess think about like being with your parents, like you're already scared to kind of say something. Now imagine if you're in a work environment where you're surrounded by adults, that can harbor a lot of really weird feelings, and it can make it scary for anybody, any child, to speak up and kind of say something for themselves. And again, a really big thing that I took away was just these children felt like they lost their purpose, and they were only like 14, 15 years old, and they're lost, and they don't know what's happening, and they don't know where their life is going to go, because their whole life kind of blew up, I guess, when they were children. And a lot of child stars say this, not only children on Disney or Nickelodeon. If you look at, I forget what his name is, but the main character from Everything Everywhere All at Once, he was also a child star that was in Indiana Jones as one of the children. And he talks about when he finally won his awards and was finally getting accolades and for being in Everything Everywhere All at Once, he talks about how he thought that the end of his career was already done and that his peak was Indiana Jones. He thought that he peaked when he was 10, 11 years old. And I cannot resonate with that. I don't relate to that. I don't know what that feels like. And I'm sure that's a heavy burden to carry, especially as a child. And it really sets your life up to be something that you don't really know what you're in for. And as somebody who works in the entertainment industry, although it doesn't look exactly the same of what it was then, because if you think about like Miranda Cosgrove, Ariana Grande, Jeanette McCurdy, Drake Bell, Josh Peck, these people were on top of the world, A-list celebrities. Like, they were the it people. They had cameras on them at all times. And social media wasn't really existent at that point. So this was all organic love and admiration. And I think that's another level that adds on to that period of time. and why those people have the legacies that they have, because they didn't have social media to constantly be reminding the masses of who they are. They just built something that was so monumental for the time being, and people loved them for it. And something that I've noticed, especially just like working on social media, is just when you could blow up at any time. You could blow up at any time. It doesn't matter what you look like, how old you are. You can have a viral video go viral for whatever reason. And you could be 10 years old, 11 years old, 15, you could be 25, you could be 45. It doesn't matter. There's really not an age limit here. And something that I've noticed is, what does it, and something that I guess a question that was brought up upon when I was watching this documentary was, what does that look like now? Because we're talking about the past, and we're talking about, how weird stuff was happening on set, and how this weird power dynamic was happening between children and the adults, but they were all coworkers at the same time. And although there is obviously child stars still now to this day, there's children that act in movies, but with apps like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, it's a lot, children are a lot more susceptible to falling into kind of that public eye as they were back then. Back then, you had to do auditions, you had to go and talk to this person, you had to get an agent. Now it's like you post a viral video and you pick off some momentum off of that, and you could build a pretty good career off of it. And I know we touched upon child stars in earlier episodes, but I keep asking myself, like, what does that look like for now? And then I think about myself, and if I were to blow up the way that I did, I would have all this momentum that I have now when I was, let's say, 13, 14, or 15 years old. How would I cope with that? How would I deal with that? And the only answer that really pops up in my head is I wouldn't. I wouldn't know how to navigate it. I wouldn't know how to maneuver it. I don't know. I wouldn't know anything, because at that point, I don't even know myself. So what is it that I'm really putting out to this world if I don't really have a sense of myself? When I was 15 years old, I didn't know. I mean, yeah, I had things that I like and I don't like, but a sense of self, I didn't really have. I don't know what 15-year-old has it all together like that. And if you do, I mean, props to you, but I'm not sure. I'm sure that majority of teenagers, or I don't even want to say young adults because they're children, but children don't really have a sense of self yet. And a big thing that's actually scary, that something just popped up into my head, is even, I guess, with family channels, going back to, Ace Family of it all, like their babies growing up in front of a camera, or parents putting their children on the TikTok and making them do little suggestive things, which has been a very big conversation on certain apps about where are the rules and regulations when it comes to a parent putting their child in like a little provocative costume, or a little, like a baby, making them like eat something that's very suggestive in a way. Like, there isn't really any rules or regulations there. And then when you start to do a deep dive into those accounts, you realize that the majority of the people following those accounts are men, older men. And what does an older man have to look at an 8-year-old? Like, it's very uncomfortable. And I think that as time goes on, and as, obviously now that we have the quiet on set, it took however many years for that to come out. I don't want to say I'm excited, but I'm intrigued to see what this generations of child stars are going to look like. Because although it may not be at that same scale, the access is a little daunting. The fact that you could post a video and it can reach over 100 million people within a matter of days. I mean, for me especially, I posted one video and that video got over 40 million views. And now if I was a kid and I did that, I would not only fall under the same thing of like, okay, oh my God, well, this is a lot of attention. This is amazing. Like, all my friends at school are going to say something, because that's another element that we forget about. I'm an adult. I'm not in school anymore. I'm not in elementary school. I'm not in high school. There's that other element that adds to when you go back to school and you have a viral TikTok or Instagram video or YouTube video. Like, what are the kids going to think? Oh my God, I want to upkeep with it. Now all of a sudden, are you a popular kid? Like, there's just so much, I guess, politics, for lack of a better word, that go into it. And I know that in certain situations, I don't think I would have been able to deal with all of this if I were young. If I'm going to be very honest. Like, this is a job within itself. And I'm not going to say this is the hardest job ever, but you are almost, your job is to entertain the masses. That's what your job is. You're here to put out entertaining content, to make people feel something, to make people feel good. And for example, something that pops up into my head all the time is when I got asked to be in a content house, and I feel like I've been talking about it a little bit more, but I really haven't dived in to what that era of my life was like, because it was a scary era. It wasn't the best thing ever. But again, I use the excuse I was young. To be fair, I was 22 years old, so I wasn't that young. I was fairly young, but I wasn't that young. And I still didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I know that there's certain content houses that, like the kids house or whatever, and they're 10, 11 years old. And they're signing the same contracts I'm signing, or I did sign. And they're working with these major brands. There is a certain standard that you want to hold yourself up to, because if a brand is investing money in you, you also want to be able to be a good brand representation for them. And as a 10-year-old, to have to then start thinking about, okay, if I want to work with this brand, these big multi-billion dollar brands, I need to make sure that I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, instead of just living your life as a kid, learning trials and tribulations, because you're not really allowed to do that when you're in front of a camera. I have seen so many children that have blown up on social media, and now they're integrated into this world of adults. And this world of, when you're dealing with the brand or you're signing a contract, they're not 15. Like, you're dealing with older people. Obviously, they're not like old, but like, damn, that sounds crazy. You're dealing with older people. And then you have to get a lawyer. You don't even know what a lawyer. When I had to get a lawyer, I had no idea what that meant. Like, I had no idea that, and maybe this is my own naiveness, I guess, but still, as a child, if you were to tell me at 15 years old, you need to get an entertainment lawyer, I'd be like, I don't even know where to look for that. I don't even know where to begin with that. And back to the content house, I saw that house. And what was weird to me was they were bringing older creators. And now older creators, I mean like people my age, people 30, people that were 40, to go collaborate with this children's content house. And it always brings me back to like, where are the parents? Because if you live in a content house, you live in the house. You live and breathe content. That's what you do. You wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and you have a meeting and you discuss what content's going to be made within the house. Then you have to think about your own content. And it's just like this big thing. You are living in your office, essentially, is kind of what that is. And to be a child and to do that, and to then have older people come in and we're going to collaborate off of you because we want to have this be a mutual beneficial thing, right? If I'm on your platform, it helps you. And if you're on my platform, it helps me. So now we're helping each other. But when that relationship is between a 10-year-old and a 40-year-old, it's like, what is this power dynamic? And okay, I'm going to do it because at the end of the day, I want to further my career, but you're 10 years old and you're living in a content house in LA, which LA is a great place. But as far as the content creator influencer industry in LA, it's a really dark and it's a really shallow place. And I know that the last time I spoke about Los Angeles in reference to the influencer industry, a lot of people got mad at me and they called me a transplant and this and this and this, but it is true. It is true. It's a very shallow place. It almost doesn't feel real. It feels like you're in the Twilight Zone when you're in Los Angeles and you're working as a content creator with going to these spaces and you're within that industry. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel good. Like, I don't think I ever left a situation there where I was within like the content creation thing and felt like, oh yeah, that was amazing. It was very like touch and go, touch and go, touch and go. LA is very fast paced and everything there is accelerated, just like New York is. But New York has a different level of acceleration. Obviously they're on completely opposite coasts, so it's different. But I wouldn't imagine what that feels like as a child. And I know I was at a party that it was like everybody was drinking. There was bars everywhere. And there were like underage kids there. And I was like, this is insane. And you ask them, they're like, oh yeah, I can't drink. But because I have X amount of followers, I can get in. And you start to kind of see that a little bit more, that with especially in a place like Los Angeles, your followers do matter, like in certain situations. I'm not saying in all of Los Angeles, but within the entertainment industry of the influencer culture, yeah, they matter. It matters. And if you have 50 million followers, I'm sure, and you're 17 years old, you can get into a club. You can get into some clubs, maybe not all of them, but you definitely can get into some. It gives you a different level of access to things that maybe children shouldn't be able to do. And in that same sense of like Nickelodeon, when those kids were blowing up, or you see like take it even further than that, like the Drew Barrymores of the world, where they were talking about being in Studio 54 and being a child. But why? Because when you have so many eyes on you, that provides so much access. And it's a it's an interesting thing, it's a sad thing, and I genuinely hope that if you are a child that is on any type of social media app and you have a pretty big platform, that you realize that one, the number doesn't define you. I think that's a really big thing that I've seen with like younger people on these apps, that the number defines them. It doesn't define you. You fall into that. And although, yes, it's all fun and it's all dandy, a lot of these events are late night events. They're at clubs, they're at bars, there's drinking, there is drugs involved. And it's easy to get wrapped up in the facade of everything, or the glitz and the glamour of, oh my God, I'm hanging out with like all of these different people and all these older adults, and they're all drinking and they're all, smoking this and doing whatever. Like, it gets easy for a child to succumb to temptations in that sense, because you're a child at the end of the day. And it's, my question is like, what are we doing to stop that? Because even within the Raven podcast that I watched, she talks about how there isn't really any laws to protect children in the entertainment. There is laws to protect children that are working, but not in the entertainment industry. They're very different. It's its own segment. It's its own thing. And there are close to none. I know they have the thing with like Coogan accounts, and that was set up. But even then, there's a way around the Coogan account. Like we saw with the Honey Boo Boo girl. Her mother stole all of her money. And her mom says it's because she put it back into the house. And technically, I know everybody's saying like her name is, I think, Alana, which is like the Honey Boo Boo girl that was on Toddlers and Tiaras, and she was on Dancing with the Stars. And there's a certain episode where she talks to her mother and she's like, where is all the money that was supposed to be in the Coogan account? Where is the money? And she's like, well, I put the money in there, but I only put the minimum. And the minimum was nothing in accordance to how much money she was making. This child, or this young adult now, should have been well taken care of. But because she had, for lack of a better word, a selfish mother, that she didn't technically do anything illegal, which is the worst part, is that she put the minimum of what she was supposed to put in the account, and then everything else she took. So as opposed to that account having over millions of dollars, it's not even enough for her to take care of herself for the year. She wants to go to college. She can't go to college now because there's no money in that account, even though that child has been working since she was 6 years old, and now she's like in her 20s or late teens. And so even in situations like that, there's not that really much to protect the children. And now with the age of social media, it's kind of like we're finding out what this is in live time, and it's difficult to kind of make laws around it when you don't really know the extent of what it is. If you take the difference between when I was a kid as opposed to now, because a big thing that they had on Quiet on Set was what Nickelodeon's statement was of being like, we have changed our policies, everything is different. Even Raven kind of commented on it being different. And she's like, the things that are set up now in place are not things that we had when I was a kid and I was a child actor. For example, if there's any meeting, lawyers need to be present, parents need to be present. So the industry is changing, maybe not as fast as we would like it to, but at the same time, we have to also take into account that things are happening so much quicker now. Like apps are coming out every year where you don't know what's going to blow up next. You don't know what's going to be the next app. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's a little difficult to kind of hone in on one thing when if you try to, by the time you finish that, there's something else popping up. And it's a big thing that's been happening. It's a big conversation that's been happening for a while now. And I'm interested to see what's going to come out of this era. I'm interested to see what the next era is. And hopefully what I take away most of this is the learning experience that we are using. Like, we don't want history to repeat itself. And I think now especially we've taken what's happened in the past and we've learned from it, and we've learned to kind of okay, let's not repeat this. And that was a big thing that they said on Quiet on Set. It was like, we don't want this to happen again. We don't want this to happen again. And it's just going to have to be a thing of, also one big thing that I do want to say is like, if you are a child that is on social media, like the number doesn't define you. And the biggest thing is like, remember to have fun with it. The internet can be a scary place, but more than anything, to have fun with it. This is the point of social media, was to connect with other people that you may have never known, or find your own community, which I think is the beauty of social media, is that you can find your own community, even if your community isn't necessarily in school. I know that's what I did. Like, I didn't really have friends in school, so I went onto the internet and I found friends on Sardal and Club Penguin. Like, that is kind of the beauty behind it. But, you know, with every good, there's a bad. And it takes for us to learn from our past mistakes to keep it moving forward. And more than anything, I want to give a shout out to everybody that did the Quiet on Set documentary. The bravery it took for them to get in front of a camera to recount these stories again. And it wasn't even just a self-interested thing. Like, they're not sitting there because they want to be in the limelight. They're sitting there because they genuinely want to make a change, and they want the world to know, hey, this is what happened to us. And we were children, and let's not have this happen again. And that's not an easy thing to do. And there's so much that we could learn from that, not only just us as people, but the entertainment industry can learn from that, children can learn from that, and also the parents can learn from that. Because what I really appreciated out of the documentary was not only did they include child stars, they included their parents. And they talked about what their parents felt like, and how their parents were also living in somewhat of a state of fear, that they didn't want to take this dream away from their kid, but they knew that something wasn't necessarily right happening in that time. And I think it's also important for the parents to watch this. And if your child does want to go into the entertainment industry, realizing that you are their protector, right? It's not their lawyers, it's not their team, it's not the people on set, it's the parents. And it was a beautifully done documentary, really getting every single side of it. They had people that were working on the actual sets. They had the cameramen there, they had the child stars there, they had the parents there. And it was a really big moment for everybody to learn on how they could do better moving forward. And if these stories are not shared, we wouldn't know about them. And we wouldn't know that something was wrong. If we wouldn't know that what was happening behind the scenes, because as a consumer, as a child, I'm watching this and I'm living my life. I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. They're living the dream. I remember I wanted to be on Disney Nickelodeon so bad. Like, I just saw them living their life, not realizing that behind the curtain, there was so much more happening. So for the fact that they were the people that got to pull that curtain and say, this is what was happening to us, learn from this, and let's not have this happen again, is a beautiful thing. And they should be so proud of themselves. I think the world is proud of them. And those are the stories that need to be shared, because for the people that, you know, we're talking about it because we know them, right? We grew up with all of these people. We grew up with Nickelodeon and all these shows. But what about all those kids that were also in the entertainment industry that maybe didn't reach that level of success, but were still on those sets? That's kind of where it's almost as if they're using their voice to kind of voice the people that maybe you don't know about, these kids that were behind the scenes. Maybe you don't know about all these other kids that were happening, because maybe they didn't reach that level of success, but that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't go through the same things. So yeah, it was, if you haven't watched it, definitely go take a watch at it. Go check it out. It's definitely trigger warning. It's very, very, they go into a good amount of detail. But again, it's necessary. Sometimes out of discomfort, change happens, and sometimes you have to get a little uncomfortable. And imagine them sitting there in that chair and recounting stories about how they felt uncomfortable when they were 8, 9 years old. That's not an easy thing. So I take my hat off to them. And hopefully we keep moving on this trajectory. We just keep learning. We keep learning, and, you know, we keep hearing the stories and keep making spaces for these people to share their stories. Because I think that's a really big thing too. Like, we have to be able to allow these people, create a space for them to say, this is what's happening. Because I think back then, a really big thing that kept popping up was that there wasn't really a space for them to say something. Because if they say something, it's over. Their careers are over. And a lot of these people were holding their whole financial success of their families on their back, and creating the spaces like these documentaries to come out and say, this is what happened, creates a space for people to be okay, to say, hey, I felt uncomfortable in this situation, and it's okay, and it's not gonna and be the end of your life. It might potentially help a lot of other people. And I think that's definitely what they did. So hats off to them. Let's keep learning. Hopefully we learn from our mistakes. And, although social media, entertainment, it's an ever-changing business. It's so fickle. It's insane. But we need to do our job to make sure that we're protecting the people that need to be protected. And we give space to those voices to be heard, because they deserve to be heard, especially when they're children. Like, it was a hard watch. I can't even sit here and say it wasn't. It was definitely a hard watch, but it was a necessary watch. And I think that anybody who's planning on, even if you're planning on having children, or if you're a parent, or if you're somebody that works on the sets, or you want to be a director, or you want to be a child actor, like, watch this and understand how to move forward with that information that was given to you by these brave and courageous people. So that was it for today's episode. Thanks, guys, for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and let me know what you guys think about it. Like, did I miss anything out? What are your opinions about what child stars look like now? If you watch a documentary, what are your opinions on the documentary? Moments that stood out for you? Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys next week.